Hello, Radio Olympia.
Ever since television broadcasting first began over 70 years ago, the medium has grown and developed, with the small screen finding a home in almost every single UK household. Over time, TV has stabilised to contain a number of recognisable formats that are seldom seen in other mediums. By far the most notable of all these is the serial drama, which can be seen to dominate transmission schedules all over the world. In a format that has existed for decades, individual episodes often in turn lead towards an eventual finale, be that of a series or just a storyline. One doesn't need to be an academic in order to recognise this structure. It's increasingly made apparent to audiences, encouraging certain moments to be seen as event TV. The finale of a season or reveal of a cryptic mystery are highlighted as ways of advertising a series. This is the status quo for modern television, however it may finally have met its match. Netflix is a television streaming service based in California that originally launched as a DVD rental service for films. After advancing down the route of original programming, the company has gained critical acclaim for a number of its unique shows, all of which were released not episodically, but with the upload of an entire season at a time. Author Trisha Dunleavy writes that it seems significant that in American television, this complex serial drama has developed and flourished only in the context of the commissioning of original long-format TV drama by non-broadcast networks. But what is the difference? There's been much discussion about how Netflix's subscription model threatens traditional television networks such as Sky, Channel 4 or the BBC. If audiences can have control over the ways in which they engage with content, why would they ever choose to themselves be controlled by a linear schedule, when instead they can watch TV in a more user and time-intensive way? Industry experts are clearly concerned about this factor of the rise of streaming services, but one could argue that there's a more interesting conversation to be had here. Binge culture is resulting in significant changes being made to the narrative structure of television content to the extent of being a very different medium. Netflix is far from the first subscription-based service to use its unique business model as a way to disrupt the creation of content for television audiences. HBO, standing for Home Box Office, launched as a premium American TV channel in 1975 and rose to prominence in the early 90s for its slate of original programming content. Requiring a subscription payment in order to view its programming meant that HBO could be free of advertising and therefore focus on structuring TV programs in a much more cinematic format, no longer needing to have each 15-minute act build to a mini cliffhanger and granting it the ability to have episodes last as long as the writers needed to tell the full story. The major difference between HBO and Netflix, however, is that the Home Box Office still operates on a linear TV schedule, resulting in the channel garnering huge critical and cult success for programs such as Game of Thrones, The Sopranos, and The Wire. The later prompting theorists Joe DeLira and Sean Michael Robinson to say that if binge watching the iconic show, one would perhaps miss the essence of what makes it great. The slow build of detail, the gradual and yet inevitable churning of the great wheel of the world. Jason Mitchell defines modern serial programming as complex TV, not necessarily a complete merger of episodic and serial forms, but a shifting balance, an interplay between the demands of episodic and serial storytelling, often oscillating between long-term arcs and standalone episodes. An episode of a series may continue the main storyline of the show, but can also include its own storyline, to be wrapped up over its own unique running time. Modern television is often described as being cinematic, largely in reference to the high production values of programs such as Game of Thrones. In the age of Netflix, TV is now structured much more like cinema, with a season being similar to a 10, 13 or 22-hour film. When discussing House of Cards back in 2014, creator Bob Williman alluded to this, referring to the first two seasons not in terms of episode count, but saying that, "I thought of seasons 1 and 2 as a combined entity, a 26-hour movie. Something that becomes clear when watching the show." House of Cards' first episode ends with protagonist Frank Underwood sat reading a newspaper outside his favourite restaurant. The credits roll and, thanks to Netflix, Episode 2 automatically begins, with Frank paying for his meal. The final scene of Episode 1 shows Frank delivering one of his signature monologues about the strength in his relationship with restaurant owner Freddie. Episode 2's first piece to camera continues this exact sentiment from an identical shot. The separation of these two lines of dialogue through an episode break is nothing more than a formality. Audiences are expected to continue watching, and almost punished if they don't. Whilst the differences between Netflix's original programming and that more likely to be found on a traditional TV network is clear, it's surely possible that this is simply a coincidence, resulting from the thematic choices of the production companies that the streaming service has done business with, and that, had they funded a series with other styles, then those styles would have prevailed. It's an interesting theory, one that essentially kills this essay's thesis dead in the water. However, there's proof of this not being the case. An example that comes from perhaps one of the only companies whose actions have impacted the modern media industry on a level comparable to that of Netflix. Yep, In 2008, the film Iron Man marked the beginning of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, a series of films and television series that all take place in a single canon based on the works of Marvel Comics. The universe currently contains releases from a number of different genres. There's a World War II action movie, a coming-of-age superhero drama, a political spy thriller, and a science fiction romp, to name just a few. But Marvel manages to inject each of these with the familiar atmosphere of light-hearted comedy and charm.
I'm made of rocks, as you can see, but don't let that intimidate you. You don't need to be afraid unless you're made of scissors.
Whilst Netflix opts to disrupt the televisual episodic model in its telling of larger stories, opting to focus instead on film-like narrative structures, the MCU goes fully against this trend. Each of its TV shows feature the familiar balance between episodic and serialized content, but even Marvel's cinematic output falls into more of an episodic model. Each installment tells its own story, but slowly progresses the overarching narrative of the franchise, and all end with a cliffhanger-style tease of what comes next, leading to an ultimate finale. Despite this, there's a single strand of the MCU that doesn't quite fall to this format, obviously in its 6 shows for Netflix. Television episodes, and most notably their pilots, are built around a 5-act structure, beginning with a 2 to 3 minute teaser that establishes the story and leads into the titles. Marvel and ABC's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. first episode cuts to its titles at exactly 2 minutes and 54 seconds into the show after a single scene. That's the teaser. On Netflix, Marvel's Daredevil also has a cut at the 3-minute mark, however transitions us from its opening flashback to an adult Matt Murdock in a confessional as he reflects on the previous scene, with this leading us to another cut as his priest asks,
"What exactly are you going to do?"
Only at the end of this scene, over 7 minutes into the episode, are we given titles. Daredevil eschews the conventional wisdom of a traditional episode and continues to do so throughout. After the titles, script analyst Ken Miyamoto posits that 11 minutes should be spent on a show's first act. Daredevil does it in 5. Romal Sharma explains how when traditional American TV networks commission TV, they do so by ordering a number of episodes, concluding that the basic default unit of television storytelling is the episode. Netflix's programming is always defined by the renewal of a season, with these varying in length based on the budget or the narrative demands of the showrunner. When actor Kevin Spacey was fired from House of Cards, the length of season 6 was reduced accordingly. The season is the unit of storytelling here, and this priority can be seen to overrule the otherwise consistent style of Marvel's universe. If the narrative structures prominent across Netflix were not a deliberate result of the box set model, then surely the cohesive style that exists across all other platforms of the MCU would have prevailed. In talking about creating box set dramas, Ted Kessler best summarises the entire medium by saying, "Instead of focusing on individual episodes, think of the whole season as a layered 3-act story." Not only does this quote reinforce the concept of the season of a unit of television, but it also provides a definition for this entire genre of storytelling. The 3-act structure, popularised by Sid Field in 1979, is considered by many to be a definitive guide to structuring a feature film. Field defines a film's first act as leading until the moment whereby a character enters a new world and acquires their overall target, with this taking place approximately 25% into a film's running time. At the end of episode 3 of Daredevil, just under a quarter of the way through the series, Matt Murdock discovers the identity of the series' overarching villain. He identifies the real conflict he must face and discovers the true nature of Hell's Kitchen's crime epidemic. The next 7 episodes fulfill Field's description of a film's second act, in which characters should struggle to meet their new goal. Murdock comes face to face with Fisk a number of times here, and the two rally back and forth, each gaining victory over the other. Finally, this act ends with Matt's superhero status being discovered by his best friend Foggy, as he vows his dedication to stopping Fisk, therefore catapulting the cast into Field's Act 3, in which characters should work together to overcome a larger threat, escalating the conflict between good and evil. Ending with a narrative conclusion, Daredevil may be broadcast as TV, but it's very much a 13-hour story, intended to be viewed concurrently, constructed as a whole. This isn't television. The differences between Netflix MCU content and the otherwise formulaic and consistent Marvel universe highlight the effect the box set model has on the narrative structure of the serial drama. Just as Mittal defined the serial as being a combination of serialized content and episodic, the box set drama is the continuation of this mix and evolution. Collado discusses how television needs to be accessible to audiences distant from the previous episode, whereas the box set drama's continuous narratives almost punish spectators for this. Clinging to the idea of 60-minute episodes is at odds with the nature of Netflix's release model, and gaining confidence to step away from the structure of TV is therefore essential. Whilst HBO promoted itself with the slogan, "It's not TV," the earlier subscription-based service understood the limitations of its format, the next step for the box set drama is surely to gain a similar level of self-awareness.